What is going on, everybody out there in the YouTube trucking community? Sean Cahalan, Christian brother trucker, coming at you again with another video today. And today we're going to be talking about batteries. So I just got over here, back over to PTL, because I went over to Landstar, and then I came back over here and got a 2020 Freightliner Cascadia. And this thing has, let's see, 4 batteries underneath the main step, basically underneath the driver's side, accessed through a little panel that you got to take off, and then you take the cover off the batteries, and there's 4 batteries there. And then it has an EPU, so on the back of the truck it has an additional 4 batteries in between the frame rails that you take a cover off the top, and then it reveals 4 more batteries that run an air conditioner and runs your power inverter and all of that fun stuff. So over the last couple of days, I've noticed a couple of weird things, a couple of weird side effects that this truck is having problems with. One of them was that, well, what indicated it, the problem to me today, was my air conditioner stopped working up in my front of the truck. It was working, and then all of a sudden it wouldn't work. And that was one electrical problem that came up today. But last night when I was sleeping, on this truck you can put it on standby mode, opti-idle, and it will go into standby, and as soon as the voltage drops on your batteries to a certain level, the truck will automatically start up and it'll charge your batteries back up. Well, last night, my low voltage indicator on my power inverter started beeping, which was telling me that there was low voltage, and then after a couple minutes it shut off all the power back there to my refrigerator, microwave, and I have an electric cooler plugged in up above the second bunk. So it beeped and shut off, and then so I came up here, fired up the truck, started it up for a few minutes, and then went back to sleep. Well, a couple minutes later it started beeping again. Well, that time the truck decided to go ahead and fire up and charge up the batteries on its own. So that was another weird indicator that something was off. Another thing that I've noticed is that the EPU setup back there, the condenser fan and a couple of other things haven't been acting quite right. So this, I can't set the thermostat, I can't change the settings. It just hasn't been acting right. So I thought that was a little odd. Some of the other things that you might notice is some of your gauges might not work right. You might get warning indicator lights on your dash and stuff like that that's not going to work right. All of these indicators tell you that you've got something electrical going on, and that the sensors aren't talking to each other correctly. The first time I ever experienced this problem was with a Volkswagen Jetta that my ex-wife owned, and it eliminated a power steering level light, or power steering light on the dash. And so I looked it up in the manual, and it said check the power steering fluid. So I did. I checked the power steering fluid, and this is after I ran down to the auto parts store and bought some power steering fluid to put in there. And I go to check the level, and it's full. So that wasn't what the problem was. And then there was a couple of more weird indicators, that warning lights that came on that shouldn't have come on. ABS sensor lights, and things like that. When it comes to your batteries, we've got to realize, back when I was growing up, I'm going to age myself here, but back in the 90s, it was really simple. If you had problems with your batteries, your car wouldn't start because it was dead, right? And if your car was hard to turn over, it was either because it was really cold outside or you needed a new battery. So you pretty much just knew, if my car doesn't start, it's either the alternator or it's the battery. Well, cars are a lot more complicated than that nowadays. Nowadays, your battery terminals can be loose, and if your battery terminals are loose, you're going to get all kinds of weird bugs and things going on in your truck that you just can't explain, that have no rhyme or reason to it at all, but you'll start getting weird stuff going on the vehicle. In the instance of the Jetta, what happened was I chased down a couple of weird things. You know, I was chasing warning lights, and it didn't make any sense. And I did notice that it was getting a little bit hard to start. And so with that, I had the battery tested, and yep, sure enough, it was a bad battery. But what I've noticed on these trucks, and I had an International, one of the trucks I drove for PTL was an International, and it was a little hard to start. It was struggling to start, and so I checked the terminals on the battery, and sure enough, the terminals were loose. Just so you guys know that when you take these trucks in for their regular maintenance stuff, they don't check the terminals on the batteries. There's 13 of them, 13 bolts that hold all these terminals down. I think there's like 8 on the front set, and in the back, behind the frame rails, I counted them. There was 13 bolts holding everything down on top of the batteries. So, after chasing a couple of gremlins, I figured I'm gonna pull in, take a break, and I'm gonna pull out a socket wrench, and I'm gonna pull these covers off, and I'm gonna check all these battery terminals. And there was 3 or 4 on the back set that were loose, and then there was another 3 or 4 that were loose on the main set of batteries on the tractor. So if you have any kind of weird electrical gremlins that you just can't figure out, pull your battery covers off, and I would say wiggle your terminals, but that's normally not enough to check to see if they're loose. I actually had to get a wrench out and check each one and tighten them all down. Because these vehicles nowadays have so many sensors, and they're so sensitive that if your terminals are not, they could be tight, but if they're not torqued down, you lose continuity, what's known as electrical continuity. And just a little bit of decline in the continuity of the circuits. These sensors run off of milliamps, and milliamps is a very, very, very small amount of amperage. And so everything can appear normal. The truck
Continue on the current road.
The truck was starting just fine. Didn't notice any issues with that. All the lights were illuminating just fine, and it was driving down the road just fine. But there was just those little things that were just odd that kind of clued me in that I might have some electrical continuity issues. And like I said, with each truck, it's going to be a little bit different because of, continuity issues with sensors can, it can be a whole lot of different things. The air conditioning wasn't working right. The air conditioning in the back of the bunk wasn't working quite right, and it wasn't starting when it was supposed to start to charge up the batteries, which basically told me that the truck doesn't know when the voltage is low because the terminals are loose, and so there's a continuity issue. So your sensors aren't going to be reading right, and your sensors aren't going to be talking to each other correctly because there's going to be low voltage and low amperage. So, hot tip, if you're having any issues, before you take it to a shop, pull your battery covers and tighten down all of your battery terminals to make sure all your battery terminals are tight, and see if that fixes your problem before you take it to a shop. If you take it to a shop, they're automatically just going to test your batteries, and if they test your batteries and you have loose terminals, guess what? They're going to tell you your batteries are bad, and now you're going to be out 4 batteries. That maybe the terminals were just loose and they weren't charging all the way up, and that's all you got to do is just tighten everything down. Some shops have been known, and I've heard stories about guys that take their trucks in because their truck's having a hard time starting, and the first thing they do is they yank the starter off, put a new starter on it, send you down the road, and the next thing you know, your batteries die. So just first thing that you'd always check is check those terminals, those posts, tighten them all down, make sure everything's tight, and then you can pop your hood and check your terminals where they go into the alternator. Make sure that the nuts and bolts that connect all of the wires that go to the alternator are tight. Sometimes those will shake loose from vibrations and stuff like that. And if you're having problems with your starter, crawl up underneath your truck and locate your starter. It's round, it's really big around, and it's about that long, and it basically hooks up behind your engine on your flywheel and turns your flywheel in order to start your truck. Anyway, so if you locate this big old torpedo looking thing, it's about that long, about 12, 18, 24 inch, that's long, and it's round, and it has a solenoid on top of it. So if you locate that, locate the terminals that go to it, and make sure that those nuts and bolts that hold your wires up to it are tight as well. Sometimes those will vibrate loose and you won't be having a good connection going to your starter. Check those things first. It could save you hundreds of dollars and a lot of downtime by having to take the stupid thing into a shop for them to grab a wrench and tighten down a couple of nuts or bolts or whatever the case may be, whichever is loose, which is causing continuity issues in your electrical system. So that's all I've got on batteries. If you like this video, please like and subscribe and share. And as always, thanks for watching.